This is the Hope Not Note podcast,
where we answer your questions and share inspirational stories to fill your soul with hope.
Our mission is to empower hope to those who have been plagued by nope.
I'm Dr. Dylan Caswell.
And I'm Brandy.
And we're here to bring you out of the nope and into hope.
Welcome to the Hope Not Note podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. This episode is from a listener named Alyssa, and she asked the question, I got a concussion in a soccer game, but was fine and ready to play the next week.
Let's go.
My teammate had a concussion and missed the rest of the season. I know.
Let's not go.
I know. I know each injury is somewhat different, but I'm wondering why some people heal quickly from concussions where others have symptoms for months.
That's a great question.
Yeah, I've only had a concussion once and mine had me out for a while.
Yeah.
I think I was out for over a month.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
I think part of the answer will bring up some stuff for you as to potentially why, because to be honest, Alyssa, this is something that researchers are asking the same question. How come some people recover within 7 days? And honestly, the statistics on this are 80 to 90% of people with concussions will heal within that first week and not go on to have post-concussion syndrome. 10 to 20% will go on to have post-concussion syndrome.
So I was in the 10 to 20%. What were you? Because you've had concussions many times, haven't you?
Yeah, I've had 7 or 8
Oh my goodness.
concussions, and honestly, each one has been different. And it makes sense to what we'll talk about, but the ones early on, 7 days, I was good to go. The ones I had later on, not so much. Those symptoms kind of lasted a little bit longer and just stayed with me a bit more. And I'll share the story of one of the concussions I got because it's kind of hilarious. So we were in a adult softball league, and me, my brother, and one of our friends were just at the park, just getting in a batting practice before the season starts, because I was coming from baseball at that time, and hitting a softball in slow pitch, it's different than hitting a baseball. The technique's a little different, where you hit the bat, where you hit the ball, it's all just a little bit different. So we're just getting in swings, and our buddy's pitching and my brother's hitting, and I'm out in the field just shagging all the softballs that they're hitting out so we don't have to pick them all up at the end. So I'm in left center field, and they hit a pop-up to deep left, and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to catch this, but I'm going to have to get it anyway, so I might as well just sprint and go get it. So I put my head down and just started sprinting, and I misjudged the distance of the ball because I never looked back for it, and the ball came down and hit me in the side of the head, and it knocked me out.
Sorry, I'm laughing.
No, it's funny after the fact because I was okay after, but concussion, all that. But yeah, so I get hit in the side of the head and it drops me on the ground, and I did have some blood coming from my ear, but I think it was just from the impact. I don't think it was cerebral spinal fluid leaking out of the ear.
Right.
But I remember, I don't know how long I was knocked out. I don't know how long it took them to notice, but I remember coming back up and them running to me, and they're like, "Dude, what happened?" And I'm like, I was chasing the ball, and I guess I was faster than I thought, and it came down and smacked me in the side of the head, and so that one led to a concussion, in which, I had the symptoms for a week, but it went on for a couple weeks. But part of that was the cognitive strain that I had that I wasn't able to decrease, or maybe I could have, but I didn't feel like it was a priority at that time to decrease it because I was a student and I didn't want to delay any time in there, right? You're paying to be at college, you don't want to sit there and go, yeah, I'm going to have to delay this semester that's already been paid for and pay for another semester. So I just kind of kept going, which I think prolonged some of those symptoms. So yeah, everyone's concussion experience can be a little bit different, but I think that's the first thing to know, is that 80 to 90% will heal, fully recover within that week time period. And if not, our message to athletes is to be honest with the trainers. Do not go back in if you're having symptoms. That can lead to second impact syndrome. And I'm not sometimes you sign a waiver to run on a treadmill, and it's the risk could be death. And you're like, it's a treadmill. But going back in, having sudden impact syndrome, that is a serious risk that the brain can bleed, it can grow in swelling, and you can pass, and it has happened before, and it will happen if you're not cautious about it. So a concussion protocol, we do not mess around with.
No.
And and as providers, you got to be really, you got to know your athletes because most athletes are going to battle to want to get back in. You got to know their patterns, you got to know their affect, you got to know how they typically act. It helps you make a better decision when they're not acting that way, right? So, for example, I was covering state championship high school lacrosse, and early in the game, kid took a shot off the back of his head. And like, if you see like lacrosse shot, like they can get up to 90 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour, depending on long pull, short pull, who's shooting it. But the ball was moving and
Mm.
smacked him right in the back of the head. And there's helmets and all that, but he got smacked in the back of the head and came off the sideline to the sideline. I didn't know the kid, right? Because I'm like independently covering this. So it was my first time meeting these teams. And this kid, his eyes are glossed over. He's squinting his eyes. And I'm like, oh, that's not looking good. But I
Mm.
talked to the coach and like, coach, like, what's his typical affect? Like, is he always kind of squinty eyed? And
Mm.
he's like, yeah, he's always like that. Like, okay, so we can't go off of that. Doing testing with him, and he's like, yeah, the noise is bothering me. But the speakers were up like incredibly loud in that stadium, and I think the noise was bothering everybody. So it was like, yes, this is a factor, but is this like bothering everybody?
Mm.
And then I'm like, okay, he passed some of the tests, and I'm like, okay, let's make him move. So he gets moving, and he's like, yeah, I'm feeling kind of lightheaded. Like, yeah, this is looking like a concussion, and the rule is that if you have doubt, you sit him out. Like
Mm.
you don't risk it, right?
Yeah.
Even with it being a state championship game, right? So I'm watching him, and I'm like, I'm gonna come back over and evaluate because he also could be lightheaded because of not having carbs. Because I asked him, "What'd you eat today?" And he's like, "Well, the last thing I ate was a protein bar at lunch." Like, this is 7 hours later, and you're playing in the highest intensity game of your life in 85-degree heat, and the only thing you ate today was a protein bar at lunch. Like, you are not fueled, so you could be lightheaded because you just don't have enough carbs
Right.
or fuel as a whole to do what you need to do in this game. But again, there was the lacrosse ball to the back of the head, and then the symptoms following it. So it's like this is looking like concussion. So I go through and I'm evaluating him, and he's like, "Yeah, I had some Gatorade. I'm not lightheaded anymore. I'm feeling good. I think I'm ready to go." I'm like, "All right, let's give it another 5 minutes. I'll come in, we'll recheck again, and just kind of see where it's at." And he's like, "Okay." So I go over and I'm like standing behind them, and their team scores, and he does not celebrate whatsoever. Like his teammates are jumping around, like screaming. It was like one of those goals that switched the momentum of the game.
Mm.
And if you love the game, you love your team, I don't care how stoic you are, you're going to show some type of excitement with that. And he showed no excitement at all, zero excitement. And I'm like, okay, yeah, no, he's done. He's
Mm.
done. And it was leaning that way. It was like 98% sure anyway. But then that extra 2% just watching the behavior because the athlete's going to battle to want to get back in. So that's kind of our long rant on like, do not mess with these symptoms.
Yeah.
And if you don't know the team that you're working with, like take your time with it, right? And ask the coach, watch the other behaviors because the athletes can say, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. And then there's memory tasks and things you can do. But the reality is too, is like you're doing a memory test on a kid that you don't really know their intellectual capabilities before you're doing the memory test.
Mm.
And some athlete like, I'm gonna give you a list of numbers and I want you to repeat them back to me, right? 1794. Like some athletes literally just they cannot do that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if they got hit in the noodle or not, they just don't have that capability
Mm.
of doing so. So the concussion tests are difficult, but again, if there's symptoms, if there's any thought that there's a concussion, like we have to treat it per the protocol for safety because again, the risk factor is death
Mm.
and not like a treadmill, like
Yeah.
okay, am I really like no, like this is a very serious thing. So that would be my first thing is just like go through the protocol, make sure that you're symptom free getting back into it. So why do some come back and why do some go on to have post-concussion syndrome? And it's something that's we don't really know. We
Mm.
don't know. We have thoughts as to what creates it and research is coming along with it, but um, there's a ways to go in the research and there's been strides made, but what we have found so far is that if someone has had previous concussions, they're more likely to go on to have post-concussion syndrome if they have another concussion.
Okay, that makes
So
sense.
there's past history of it, they're more likely to have prolonged symptoms. The second thing could be the severity of it, right? Like it's hard to, how do you grade a concussion? Grade one, two, three, like we do with a muscle strain. Like you can't really do that with it. So it's like, oh, your headache was worse, your light sensitivity was worse. Like everyone presents a little bit differently. Like no person with a concussion presents the same exact way. It's really a list of symptoms, right?
Mm.
Like, oh, I feel nauseous. Well, I don't feel nauseous, but I have light sensitivity. Like it's everyone's a little bit different, so
Um,
it's hard to grade it. But one thought is that the more neural damage that happens from the concussion injury, the more likely that you could go on to have post-concussion symptoms or syndrome, but that's not always the case.
mm.
So it makes it tricky. And then the third factor, which to me I think is the biggest factor, is psychosocial factors,
Yeah.
internal load. What's their social support prior to the injury and then immediately after the injury? Because what ends up happening when an athlete does have a concussion, what happens that next week? And I'll give the traditional thoughts to it, which is the ones that I think you and I grew up with. You get a concussion, and the protocol that you receive is to don't fall asleep.
Hmm.
Like you have to stay awake because for some reason, if you go to sleep, it's going to get way worse,
Yeah.
and we can't see how you're doing. So you have to stay awake, but you have to stay awake in a dark room with no screens or no lights.
Yeah.
So like you just had this neuronal like axonal disruption based injury and your nervous system is taught when I'm in a dark room without lights that I should be going to sleep and now you're fighting against that while it's still trying to figure out what happened and how it's going to heal from it.
Hmm.
And then it's like you're basically isolated. You know, you're not with your team. You're on a stationary bike if you are symptom free and in that first part of the protocol. Um, you might be out of class
Hmm.
for a bit and doing your own thing. And it's like that isolation factor, it it's real. Like
Yeah.
that can very much lead someone into one being hyper focused on their symptoms because they don't have anything else. Like there's no other input to
Hmm.
get them off the symptoms. So now they start getting hyper focused on it or perseverating, which hyper focus I think is a nicer way to say perseverating
Yeah.
on the symptoms. And I want to go back to the psychosocial factors of a concussion because it's very interesting. We wrote about it in the book, but the biggest change that has made concussion rates go down in football is the change in rules,
Hmm.
right? And we did a concussion or a podcast on guardian caps, not guardian caps. Those are not doing a thing for
No.
concussion, but the rule changes have. And one of the biggest rule changes is hitting a defenseless player.
Yeah.
Like you used to be able to just like take the head off of a dude coming across the middle, where now like that's penalized
Hmm.
and you get fined. So that's been taken out of the game. And what's really interesting is when science started looking at impacts and putting sensors in helmets and sensors in mouth guards to see this coup, counter coup type force that creates a concussion, they found that impact is needed. Like you need impact in order to have a concussion. Like there has to be
Right.
some type of mechanism. But that level of impact is not directly related to severity or having a concussion.
Mm.
Because what they found is that players score a touchdown and in celebration, they headbutt each other. But what's the psychosocial construct around headbutting? Celebration, brotherhood, like coming together, achieving success. Like we're in this together. What's the psychosocial construct around getting hit as a defenseless player, right? Harm, threat, like
Mm.
all the opposites of celebrating with a teammate. The other part would say, well, yeah, if they know a headbutt's coming, they can contract using feed forward mechanisms to protect by contracting their neck. Where a person that doesn't know that a hit's coming, they're not able to have that feed forward mechanism, so their head is able to move more. But it's kind of, we can't say one factor over the other factor. It's both of those factors.
Yeah.
And then when we see post-concussion syndrome, in that people that are anxious, previously, battling depression, lack of social support, like all the things that are challenging that person's basically humanhood or
Hmm.
human being, like being a human, like those matter. And if those aren't taken care of, there's high likelihood that they're going to go on to have post-concussion syndrome.
Hmm.
So from the stands, from the sidelines, we see two soccer players both get a concussion after a header. But what's happening behind the scenes?
Yeah.
What happens when they get home? What's their family? What's their support system? What does that recovery protocol look like? Because what we know now is that staying in a dark room and not having any stimulus can delay the recovery of a concussion. Now it's relative rest, which means decrease cognitive strain. That doesn't mean completely get rid of it, and decrease physical strain. So as a whole strain, decrease it. Don't get rid of it, decrease it, right? So we got to use relative rest. So one person, their family might say like, "Hey, I want you to do what you can do. Just don't do anything that's going to create more symptoms." Beautiful. That's relative rest. Where one family might say, "You're not doing anything. Give me your phone, give me your iPad.
Yeah.
Don't talk to your friends. Dark room for a week. Like you have to be in there." And like, no, that's going to lead to a longer
Yeah.
recovery.
Well, I look at my personal experience with the one concussion I had, and I got it during basketball practice. And I
Mhm.
remember it pretty vividly. I just kind of messed up the drill that we were on, and the drill was that I pass it to this girl, she passes it back, and then I pass it to another girl.
Mhm.
And I forgot that I was getting the pass back.
Mhm.
And so I turned my head and I got hit
Uh,
in like the side of the face, the temple, and I immediately, like, I didn't drop, but I immediately was like shaken, felt super nauseous, and like sat down. And then the rest of practice, I didn't practice because of how like I just felt terrible.
mhm.
But my coaches never approached me and asked me why I wasn't practicing. And if they did, I don't know if I would have said like I didn't say, "Oh, I got hit in the head." I just was like, I'm feeling off. Like I like couldn't connect the dots as to why I was sitting out. Like that's kind of
Right.
how out of it I was. But the coaches didn't see this happen, and none of my teammates said anything to the coach about me getting hit in the head. And
Right.
so when I started realizing like I think I got hit in the head, practice was over. This was a Thursday. I told my mom, like in the car, I'm like, I think I got hit in the head. I'm just feeling off. So my mom went into protective mom mode or panic mode and was like, okay, you're not allowed to fall asleep. You're not taking any medication. We need to make sure that you eat. So we like actually went to our local diner
Mhm.
for dinner. And I was like, it's so loud in here.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
like, it's a Thursday night. I'm eating diner food, but it's really loud, it's bright, and
Yeah.
all the things. And then she was afraid of me falling asleep. And then I ended up not going to school on Friday.
Mm,
So my coaches, I was just like sick. My coaches didn't know what
right.
was going on. So then by the time I got back to school Monday, I went to the trainer, told them, like, I kind of had enough realization of what was going on. So I told them, found out I had a concussion. When I went and told my coaches, they yelled at me. They legit like yelled at me and were upset that I didn't tell them on Thursday and like
Yeah.
freaked out. And granted, like I know that that came from now that I'm older. I know that it came from a place of concern
Oh,
that
yeah.
like that could have been very dangerous. My
Right.
my basketball coach was the school nurse. So
Oh,
she knows the severity of like what concussions could be.
right.
But for me, that created an even more negative
Yeah.
experience of like I don't know. I definitely like had some resent after that towards my coaches and things like that. So the fact that my concussion lasted for like a month, I'm not surprised given that my first 5 days after the concussion was that like roller coaster of like chaos.
Right.
And so like I hear your examples and I'm like, okay, that was my first concussion. However, there was so much psychosocial and like heightened nervousness and stuff like
Right.
that. And um my brother had a teammate in college who got a concussion and ended up passing away in their sleep.
Oh, wow.
But it was a football teammate, so it might have been, second
Second
concussion,
impact
second
syndrome.
impact syndrome. I think he
Yeah.
took like medication, so I don't know if like ibuprofen inhibits it. So things like that happen. And so my mom was even more, if I remember correctly, that happened around the same time. I could be wrong and maybe my dates are mixed up, but regardless, like there was
Yeah.
nervousness surrounding that experience. So I hear that and I'm like, don't mess with concussions.
No.
Communicate to the best of your ability, but also as an adult, if you know, and not even as an adult, as a listener, if you have this information now, don't go all panic mode if you experience someone experiencing a concussion because that can feed to the like recovery delay.
Right. Yeah. No. Oh gosh,
You
there's
have things
so
to
much.
say, but I also have other questions, so you hit it, but I do have like follow-up questions too.
Okay. All right. All right. So I think it was very important and sad that like your brother's teammate having a concussion and then passing
Mm,
like in his sleep, and like we don't know when it's time for someone to pass,
yeah.
but you can't help but look at that and say like that could have been very much prevented.
Hmm.
Like very much so, whether it was second impact syndrome or let's say it wasn't. Like let's say it was like from the initial hit and he just didn't get the treatment or the recommendation or didn't follow it,
Hmm.
to begin with. And it reminded me when our nephew first started playing football and he was like really young, like when they're wearing a helmet but they can barely stand up because the helmet weighs more than their body.
Yeah.
And a kid got hit in the head and not taking anything away from a volunteer coach, but the kid got hit in the head, and I see the coach over there who has no medical or healthcare background whatsoever,
Mm.
like none at all, attempting to do a concussion evaluation, shining a light into the kid's face.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm like watching this from the sidelines, and I'm with my parents, and I'm like, Mom, can I go in and just help out? Because like you saw that somewhere, but do you know what you're looking for?
Hmm.
Right. And like, if you know what you're looking for, that is a great test to use because we're looking to see, is there a cranial nerve damage? And
Hmm.
if there's cranial nerve damage, like you're going to the hospital. Right. And so this guy is just shining a flashlight into the kid's face. And I'm like, you have no idea what you're looking for.
No.
So if you're in that situation, and you're a coach who doesn't have that background, this is a situation to be safe rather than sorry.
Hmm.
Like, don't start whipping out tests that you've seen on a college or NFL sideline and go, well, yeah, you reacted the way that a person would react to light because you squinted your eyeballs. So I think we're good here. Like, we're looking for pupil constriction, pupil dilation. What happens? It tells us a cranial nerve pathway that's interrupted. There's other tests that we use to see, like, do you need to go to the hospital right now?
Mm.
Because yes, there's likely a concussion at a minimum, but there could be some brain bleeding happening that needs to be taken care of. And if it's not,
Right.
this can get messy really fast. So if you are in that situation, ask the basic questions. And then if it's like, yeah, I'm not really sure, like this is a situation, do not hesitate to send that athlete just to make sure
Mm.
that it's not anything worse and that they don't go on to pass. And, second impact syndrome, different story because it's a two-way street,
Mm.
right? Like, tell me, like, what is the progression based off of in the concussion protocol? Symptoms.
Mm.
So if the provider's not able to bring out the symptoms or the athlete's not reporting those symptoms, well, then you get to go on to the next protocol, the next
Hmm.
phase of it. And then you keep going. How do you feel today? I feel great. I feel fine, 100%. Are you telling me the truth? Yep, I'm ready to go. Okay, I'm going to use some other tests to try to trigger some symptoms and make sure you're actually good to go. But it is a two-way street.
Mm.
And so athletes have become more educated on the risk of it. So I think they're more honest than they were previously. I think coaches are much more educated on well and as a whole are doing much better. That example at state championship lacrosse, when I talked to the coach and I'm like, yeah, I don't think he's going back in. He goes, that's fine. This kid is super intelligent. He's got a long career ahead of him. I don't want to
Hmm.
risk that right now with this game.
Yeah,
A state championship game.
that's awesome.
And I'm like, that is incredible. But it just shows how far coaches have come, whether it's volunteer, whether it's not. But the whole reason I'm sharing this is that if you don't know, don't pretend that you do know and
Hmm.
put a kid in harm's way because of trying to make it look like you know what you're doing. It's so and the parents and the athlete will be more satisfied with you saying, hey, I'm not really sure. I know that this is likely a concussion, but this is looking pretty significant. You got to go. Like
Hmm.
there's loss of consciousness. If they're repeating the same stuff over and over again, like don't pull out a flashlight.
Yeah,
Send the kid to where he's going to get some medical attention
right.
to
Yeah.
be addressed. So yeah.
The questions I have, I think that you answered them already technically during when we were talking about the Guardian caps and things like that. But
Hmm.
one thing that popped in my mind was, is there a likelihood of how long a concussion will last based off of where you're hit? For example, I think of the example you used for yourself and myself. We were both hit in the side of the head.
Mm.
I think of the lacrosse player who got the ball in the back of the head, and then
Mm.
there was a girl I went to high school with who dove for volleyball and actually hit the front of her head,
Mm.
and she like had to be out of school. Like I think she ended up graduating like 2 or 3 years late, but like her situation was like almost not worst case scenario in the sense of she passing, but like one step below. Like she had to relearn how to like do a lot of stuff.
Mm.
And so I'm like, is it because she hit the front of the head? Is it different versus the sides of the head? Is like the impact of like, or is there not enough knowledge to really know?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And what we do know with concussion is there has to be this coop counter coop. So if you imagine the brain being suspended in fluid in the skull moves one way and the brain moves the opposite way, and then they come back and then boom,
Hmm.
and it ends up being this axonal disruption in the brain, almost like a shear based injury. So you need the coup counter coup type force for this to happen. Does where you get hit impact the severity? No. As far as the symptoms afterwards, could it potentially impact the symptoms that you have afterwards? Uh, yes,
Mm.
to some circumstance, right? Because of different brain areas are responsible for different things, but we're learning more and more that although the motor area of the brain is the motor area of the brain, it also is very interconnected with the sensory system, which is very interconnected with the vestibular system, very interconnected with the memory system. So they're not in these one silo components, but we might see a little bit more like back of the head that tends to be thought of in the occipital lobe as like more visual processing based
Mm.
things. So if it's in the back of the head and back, maybe we see some more visual symptoms, light sensitivity, difficulty tracking with their eyes, strain of the eyes creating headaches, things like that. But that's not all the time.
Mm.
And it's kind of it's very dynamic. And I remember back when I was doing my sports specialty and was studying concussions a lot at this point, there was a stat that really stuck out to me, and it's actually from the state of Pennsylvania.
Mm.
And this was back in, I want to say 2018 or 2019. But the sport in Pennsylvania at the high school level that had the second highest rate of concussion, what do you think it was?
Um, my thought immediately because of our listener was girls soccer.
Hmm.
Is that accurate?
Nope.
Okay.
You'd think soccer, you think ice hockey, you think lacrosse, and in that year it was girls basketball,
Mm, which is where I got mine.
which is very diverse. Which is interesting though when you think about how many impacts do you take to the head during basketball?
Mm,
Not a lot,
no.
right? Like sometimes you get a ball thrown at the face, you might take an elbow to the face.
Yeah, during a rebound.
And I'm not saying basketball's not a contact sport because there is contact in it, but it's different.
Yeah, it's not a lot of head contact. It's a
Right.
lot of like body contact or like things like that, but you're not socking people in the face.
Right. So someone could have very little amount of force that creates that coup, counter coup, and although it's a mild force or impact that creates it to any part of the head, they can go on to have severe post-concussion syndrome
Hmm.
after that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that answers your question,
Yeah.
Alyssa. Concussions are fascinating. If you're a listener and you want to learn more about the Guardian cap and why we briefly mentioned that it's not actually helping, and things like that. We will put that in the show notes for any of our football fans that want to listen to that. But I don't know if we've had any other materials about concussions on the podcast, but I do think that our one guide has some concussion stuff as well, right?
Yeah, yep, free resource. And I wanted to touch on another component that's in that resource. Is some people will say, well, what about supplements? Maybe the one athlete used supplements, the other one didn't.
Mm,
There's a ton of research happening in the supplement world with concussion right now. and mostly all of it is inconclusive. It's
Okay.
a lot of really good thoughts, good hypotheses, but like they're not there yet. So
Okay.
it's one of these things of like, yeah, if you want to go for it, go for it. Likely not going to help, probably not going to be harmful. Um, Relative rest is in, so no more dark room,
Hmm.
isolated from everything in your life. Decrease your strain to where you're below symptom threshold, and then gradually progress that each day. The other thing I want to put in here is, the pathophysiology of a concussion, like the mechanics of how this stuff happens. We talked about the impact, the coop, counter coop, and then physiologically, there's this huge disruption in the chemicals into the brain. There's this hyper response at the initial injury, and then there's a hypo response. So it goes hyperfunctioning to then very much hypofunctioning. So when a person's hypofunctioning, meaning they're feeling sluggish, they're um, just feeling fatigued, which is pretty common after you have a concussion because your body's trying to normalize again. But there's a temptation to either increase your caffeine intake because you feel so sluggish and fatigued, or if you hadn't had caffeine before, there's a temptation to start using it because you feel just down in the dumps and sluggish and you
Hmm.
got to get some stuff done. So the rule of thumb right now is don't increase your caffeine intake if you've already been using caffeine. Like don't increase it, just kind of keep it steady. And if you haven't used it before, don't start using it during the recovery.
Mm.
It's looking like that could be more harmful than helpful, at least right now
Mm.
in that. So that's our quick recap. So why can some go on to have symptoms while other ones recover and 80 to 90% recover in the first 7 days? Some will go on to have prolonged symptoms. Um, Social support, care, have they had previous head injuries? And really to me, the biggest, not taking anything away from those other factors, but the biggest one is what are those psychosocial stressors?
Hmm.
Is their environment set up to help them recover in it, or is it prolonging it by lack of support, isolation, and all those other things that come with it?
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Great recap.
Yeah. Hope story time.
Yeah, I have one. Do you have one?
Can I share one?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to share a hope story because it's very tied in to this, and it actually came up while we were recording this podcast that I had to go back into the archives to pull this one out. But
Mm.
it's a hope story in the sense of, Alyssa, I know that you said that you were back within the 7 days playing, but your friend had the prolonged symptoms. So this is more hope that you can give to your friend and hope to anyone that's listening that is suffering with post-concussion syndrome because it's very it's hard. It's a challenge. And I remember this is back around that time I was really studying a lot of concussions and did a little bit of research in it and realized that I'm not a great researcher. I'm good at reading it, but not good at conducting it. So that was helpful to learn that. Made me respect researchers a lot from their setup and methodologies and all that stuff. But anyway, I was working with a college student who had post-concussion syndrome, and she had these symptoms about 5 to 6 months after the initial concussion injury.
Wow.
And so I got to work with her, and it was just I just felt for the girl because it was her senior year. She wasn't able to go out with her friends, and she wasn't even able to be out in a common area with her friends. She had to stay in her room because the noise was a trigger for her symptoms. And then she couldn't go out to the bars, like she wasn't drinking anyway, because alcohol can prolong that recovery process as well. Um, and she just felt like this is my senior year. I'm supposed to be enjoying this. And instead, I'm stuck in my room all the time. And schoolwork is hard. And she was in a competitive program. And she's like, I'm falling behind in that because I can't keep up with it. And then I need to work to be able to like pay for this stuff, but I'm not able to do that because it just brings on my symptoms. So she was just really like back against the ropes,
Mhm.
just like, is this my life? Like, do I need to stop and just like give up on all these things? And it was sad. And I just remember looking her in the eye and saying, no, that's not the option. Like, we can recover from this. We need graded exposure because once you're past that 7 to 10 day window with these symptoms, like the treatment is graded exposure,
Mhm.
right? So, what are the things that are bringing on those symptoms, and how do we grade that amount of strain to where you're getting exposed to it a little bit, but then coming back to where it's safe for you. And so we did that, and it took about 2 months to do that, which, for her was phenomenal. She was like, wow, 2 months to not feel this way anymore. And I just remember the day by day, week by week progress that she was making. And I just remember from day one to the end of the 2 months of seeing the difference in the affect of when she came into the office.
Wow.
Like she came in the first day just like gray, down in the dumps, kind of like frowny face. And the last day, like she was a light, like coming in, just like glowing. And one of the coolest parts of the treatment, other than like her achieving all of those goals and putting in the work and staying disciplined, which like made it such a awesome um, therapeutic relationship, was that she was like, I really like yoga. And since this injury, I've been afraid to do a headstand again. And I was like, to me, that's a quality of life thing. And like, that's not a reach goal. That's a goal that is achievable. You are a college student. You are otherwise healthy, other than these post-concussion symptoms. You have the capability, you've done it before. Why are we not doing headstands? So about 4 weeks into the program, we started working on some headstand progressions
Wow.
with her. And at that last appointment, she was doing a headstand.
Wow.
So not only was she
Talk
like,
about hope, not nope.
right, like not only was she back to being able to be with her friends in the common room, being able to go out to the bars and hang out with her friends and just be a college student. Um, she was able to graduate and then went on to get her master's. And she was doing a headstand
That's so awesome.
in the gym. It was so awesome to see. So the only reason I wanted to share that is because it gives hope. It gives a framework, which is part of hope. And she had the self-agency and the goal, and she did it. And like you can do that too. Everyone, the length is going to be a little bit different of recovery because the graded exposure needs to be different. It's dependent on what that athlete's tolerating, but it's doable. It is very doable. And there's phenomenal concussion clinics just coming up more and more and more. There's a lot of neuro specialists in PT and really in the space that can help you get that. So if you're having it, like get with the people that are going to help you get out of it, stay disciplined to it, and you don't have to live with this thing the rest of your life.
Yeah. Enough said.
Enough
That's
said.
awesome. Love that hope story.
Yeah. And she was a Red Sox fan, so
You love that.
we bonded. Fenway Park.
Just a reminder, in the show notes, we are going to have the Guardian Cap episode for you so if you want to listen to that, go ahead. And then we'll also have a guide for you. It's a free guide, and it doesn't just cover concussions, but it covers really the most common sports injuries and basically what to do, what not to do, and then things that like you can do, but they don't really hurt, they don't really help, they're just kind of there. As well as additional information within those different common sports injuries, and concussion is one of them, but there's other sports injuries as well. So I will have that in the show notes for you all.
Awesome, Alyssa. Thank you for submitting the question. Thank you all for listening. Have a great week, and remember, every day is not just a day to be hopeful, but an opportunity to become hope.
The Hope Not Know podcast is meant for educational, informational, and personal development purposes only and does not constitute any health or medical advice. If you're looking for specific advice, connect with us to work with a Hope coach. The Hope Not Know podcast shall not be liable or responsible for any loss or damage allegedly arising from any information or suggestions in this podcast.